everyone. We are so happy to have you here with us on the Stronger Marriage webinar produced by the Utah Marriage Commission, hosted by Utah State University. I am Naya Phelps, and we're so excited to have you join us today. In today's webinar, we're so excited to be joined by Mai Blanchard. Mai specializes in immigrant trauma and second-generation immigrant experience. As a second-generation immigrant herself, she has a deep understanding of the unique challenges and cultural complexities that individuals and families face in the immigrant experience. Her practices focus on providing culturally sensitive therapy to address issues uh, such as acceleration stress, family conflict, identity challenges, discrimination, and trauma related to migration experiences. If you have joined us for the CEU credit, make sure to stay on until the end of the presentation. The survey that is needed for your credit will automatically load onto your screen, and then you will receive an email from the Utah Marriage Commission with your certificate. You can also email the Utah Marriage Commission, which is at marriagecommission@usu.edu, to receive your survey on this webinar. Once the survey is completed, you will attain the email with your CEU credit certification. We will now turn the time over to Mai for her presentation.
Thanks, Naya. Thanks everyone for attending. I can't see who's in here or not, so are there people here, Naya?
Yes, there's people here.
Everyone. I'm Mai Blanchard. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been practicing for about 5 years now. And yeah, my niche is working with immigrants or children of immigrants, people with migration backgrounds, and interracial couples. Okay. So today we are going to get an overview on interracial relationships, the definition of that, cultural considerations for working with them, common challenges faced by interracial couples, and then therapeutic approaches and interventions. So, defining interracial relationships. An interracial relationship involves partners from different racial or ethnic backgrounds. This can include different skin colors, cultural traditions, religious beliefs, and ethnic origins. Interracial relationships may involve couples who experience different levels of privilege and implied power and discrimination based on their racial identities. It's important to acknowledge that interracial relationships are not limited to just racial or ethnic differences, but can also encompass cross-cultural, cross-national, and cross-religious partnerships. So types of interracial relationships, this includes race, ethnicities, nationalities. For example, like the examples given, a black husband and a white wife, or vice versa, different ethnicities, Japanese versus Indian, and nationalities. So an interracial relationship also includes a Vietnamese-born person versus someone who was born in Vietnam themselves, because those are two different cultures. Giving some historical context and societal changes in regards to interracial relationships. During the 1950s, this period was marked a critical time for racial equality, with the civil rights movement challenging segregation and discrimination. In 1967, the U.S. Supreme Court's decision in Loving versus Virginia struck down laws banning interracial marriage, a major legal victory that paved the way for greater acceptance of interracial couples. Then in the 1990s, societal norms began to shift towards greater acceptance of diversity, including mixed race relationships. And then in 2015, Pew Research Center showed statistics that 17% of newlyweds are in interracial marriages compared to just 3% in 1967. So ongoing challenges that interracial couples face. Despite the progress, challenges like racism, societal judgment, and family disapproval still affect many interracial couples. In many societies around the world, interracial relationships may face prejudice, bias, or even violence. Interracial couples must often navigate these external pressures while maintaining their own relationship. This context sets the stage for understanding the unique dynamics interracial couples face, which can differ depending on geographic location, cultural context, and the racial makeup of the couple. Cultural considerations. Something to consider is cultural identity formation. Each partner brings their own cultural identity into the relationship, shaped by factors such as upbringing, traditions, language, and societal norms. For many interracial couples, one partner may have grown up in a collectivistic society, while the other comes from an individualistic culture, which affects their understanding of family, self, and social expectations. Having cultural awareness in therapy. As a therapist, it's crucial to explore the cultural background of each partner to fully grasp the lens through which they view the world. Ask questions about their traditions, values, and how their identity with their race, ethnicity, and culture how they identify with their race, ethnicity, and culture. Encourage partners to openly share with each other how their cultural backgrounds influence their current worldview. And then cultural pride versus cultural conflict. Partners may experience both pride in their cultural heritage and conflict if they feel their culture is misunderstood or underappreciated by their partner. A key aspect of therapy is helping couples navigate these moments and avoid cultural invalidation, which could damage their emotional connection. Something I wanted to just note, especially with the cultural pride versus cultural conflict, I've had couples who are maybe both Latino, but from different countries. I've also had couples who are both Latino from the same country, and they experience different senses of pride in their culture, and there will be colorism within the relationship themselves, or just how the different upbringings came. Like I've had a Mexican man grow up with a mother who, I don't remember what he said it was in Spanish, but the phrase translated to striving for whiteness, while the wife, her Mexican family had a lot of pride for their Mexican heritage. So it's really important to look out for things like that within interracial couples. I'd also like to know that they were both Mexican, but one of them was born in Mexico while the other one was not. Navigating differing cultural values, beliefs, and practices. Values and beliefs. Cultural differences often manifest in core values such as religious beliefs, views on gender roles, child rearing practices, and perspectives on work and leisure. For example, one partner might place a high value on extended family involvement, while the other may prioritize independence from family influences. I see this a lot in couples where one partner is white and one partner is of color. Traditions and rituals, differences in holiday traditions, family customs, and celebrations can cause friction if one partner doesn't understand the significance of certain practices. One partner might be used to communal extended family celebrations, while the other prefers more private and immediate family gatherings. Once again, I see this a lot with couples where one partner is white and the other partner is a person of color. And this is where therapy gets spicy during the holidays. Like, do we want to celebrate Thanksgiving the Filipino way, where we have lumpia and all these different dishes, and my whole entire extended family crams into one house, versus the white partner who grew up with Thanksgiving being celebrated with only the nuclear family. And so when we navigate this, how do we come to a compromise of like, do we alternate our celebrations? Do we figure out how to do both? And then cultural compromise and blending. In therapy, it's helpful to support the couple in finding ways to honor both cultures Blending traditions can foster mutual respect, but it may require negotiation and compromise. Encouraging couples to create new traditions that reflect both cultures can be a powerful bonding experience. We will get into parenting and how this affects parenting down the road, but I will say something that motivates my couples is when I bring in their biracial children and I ask them, what pieces of culture and tradition do you want to model for your children, and how do we start that process of communicating and having good conflict resolution skills so that we can model that to them. Intersectionality. Intersectionality refers to the way different social identities, such as race, gender, class, sexual orientation, and religion overlap and interact to create unique experiences of privilege or oppression. In an interracial couple, these identities often combine in complex ways that affect their relationship dynamics. Gender and power dynamics. For example, a woman of color in a relationship with a white male partner may experience both gendered and racialized expectations within the relationship. The white partner may unknowingly benefit from racial privilege, while the woman of color may face unique challenges tied to sexism and racism. Acknowledging these dynamics can help the couple navigate power imbalances. Class and socioeconomic backgrounds. Class also plays a role in how cultural and racial differences manifest. If one partner comes from a wealthier background or has had more educational or career opportunities, this can create tension in the relationship. Therapy can explore how these intersecting identities shape each partner's worldview and expectations in the relationship. LGBTQ plus interracial couples. Interracial couples who are also part of the LGBTQ plus community may face unique challenges due to both racial discrimination and heteronormativity. Addressing these layers of identity is essential in helping these couples feel seen and understood in therapy. Communication styles, differences in verbal and nonverbal communication. Cultural norms and communication. Different cultures have distinct norms when it comes to communication. For example, some cultures value direct, assertive communication, while others may prefer indirect communication or rely heavily on nonverbal cues, such as eye contact, body language, and tone of voice. Cultures with that assertive communication, that direct communication, I often see that come up for white people. Like, I hear a lot of, like, my family is so blunt, we just confront things head on, while in majority, my BIPOC folks are the opposite, that we rely on those nonverbal cues, eye contact, body language. And a part of that collectivistic piece is prioritizing peace and harmony amongst everyone over within themselves, or how they're feeling emotionally. Miscommunication and misinterpretation. In an interracial relationship, these differences can easily lead to miscommunication. One partner may view indirect communication as evasive, while the other might see direct confrontation as aggressive. Therapy can help both partners understand each other's communication styles and reduce frustration. High versus low context communication. High context cultures, such as many Asian, African, and Latinx cultures, rely more on implicit nonverbal cues in conversation, while low context cultures, American and European, focus on explicit, direct verbal exchanges. Bridging this gap in communication requires increasing awareness of these differences and teaching partners how to translate each other's communication styles more effectively. When I've worked with this in therapy, the biggest intervention is reframing, because sometimes if a partner perceives the other partner as aggressive, or evasive, how do we reframe that to get away from that negative or stigmatized word, aggressive or evasive? And a lot of that will come from exploring those cultural backgrounds and understanding that the purpose of these communication styles is not um it's not malicious or has malintent. So reframing is a lot of what I do in my practice with interracial couples. And then tolerating that distress for that time period of how do I get used to this? How do I accept this? And how does this become normalized in our relationship? And how can I reframe this as loving while also making those adjustments to challenge each partner? How can you change one way of behaving or one way of communicating to take that one step closer to your partner? Um, I'd also like to say in my work with couples, we do a lot of um, discussion around how do we create a culture that is blended or that is unique to just your family. If this is a blended cultural family, we can't just rely on this Vietnamese background or this European background or this Mexican background. We can create our own and establish our own that works for our family. Cultural influences on conflict resolution. Approaches to conflict. How each partner approaches conflict can differ based on cultural backgrounds. For instance, one partner might be used to resolving conflict through open debate, while the other might value harmony and avoid confrontation. This can lead to misunderstandings, especially if one partner feels that avoiding conflict means ignoring the problem, while the other believes that raising issues creates unnecessary tension. Collectivist versus individualist approaches. In collectivist cultures, resolving conflict may involve considering the well-being of the entire family or community, whereas in individualist cultures, the focus might be on self-expression and personal rights. Navigating these differences requires a deep understanding of each partner's cultural framework. And then therapeutic tools for conflict resolution. In therapy, help couples identify their conflict styles and how their cultural backgrounds shape them. Teach active listening, perspective taking, and non-defensive communication techniques to bridge the gap between different styles of handling conflict. Additionally, discussing compromise and collaboration can help resolve tensions in a culturally sensitive manner. I once had a couple where the wife was white and the husband was from Micronesia. He was an immigrant from there, and his family migrated to Hawaii. And then eventually, so they had met in Hawaii, came out to Utah, and the husband essentially had to leave his entire family and had no family besides his children and his wife here in Utah. And when I asked him how did his family resolve conflict, and at the time, and even now, I don't know a ton about Micronesian culture. Um, so I had asked him, how does your family resolve conflict? And he told me, well, my family, whenever there is conflict, we all gather with the extended family, and then the matriarch would often mediate. And so when they would have conflict, we brought in, because in here, only the wife's family was here. So we brought in her mother and tried to see, well, is this a good approach? Could we replicate his cultural background and try it this way? And that seemed to work really well because he didn't feel super alone. He needed someone to mediate, and it felt comfortable to him. I think on some degree, there was some comfortability for the wife in that it was her mother. Um, and we did that a few times, and then we even established what kind of conflict do we need this conflict resolution style. So helping couples find different ways of handling conflict within the context of what the conflict is also helped, that there was no one style of conflict resolution across the board. Okay, common challenges faced by interracial couples, external pressures, experiencing overt racism. Interracial couples often face direct or overt racism from both strangers and those within their immediate social circles. This could include derogatory comments, harassment, or hostile stares in public spaces. Such incidents can create significant emotional stress for both partners, often leaving them feeling isolated or unsafe. Therapy can provide a safe space for couples to process these experiences and develop coping strategies. I think it's important to broach this topic in therapy. I mean, as a person of color, I think it's really easy for me to broach that topic when I'm working with interracial couples. So I definitely encourage white therapists specifically to ask about microaggressions or implicit biases. And this is where you open and allow permission for stories like the brown mother being asked, "Oh, are you the nanny?" to her biracial child, um, or the uncomfortable looks that they might get that the white husband might not recognize. So just opening the conversation helps, I guess, confront these challenges. I would say it's like 50-50 that I come across couples who talk about racism and the fact that they're in a mixed race relationship. And then the other 50% where they don't even talk about it, and the colored partner kind of holds that in. The other thing I often ask, especially to the white partner, is this your first partner of color? And then if I have an interracial relationship where one might be Cuban, one might be Mexican, I also ask them, like, is this your first time dating or having a partnership outside of your race? That also opens up conversations that they might not be having at home. Discrimination in social and professional settings. Beyond overt racism, interracial couples might encounter subtle forms of discrimination in various settings, such as housing, employment, or healthcare. They may be treated differently or viewed with suspicion due to their relationship. Helping couples identify these instances of bias and empowering them to address them as a united front is crucial. An example I have in this area is in a hospital setting where the biracial couple, or the mom who was BIPOC, was in the hospital. They just had their baby. Husband had just gotten there after the birth. And just the tension in the room that they had felt when the nurse didn't realize that this was the father. Not that there is anything to really be done about it, but it is just opening these conversations and talking about how it feels, especially for the person of color. Microaggressions. Microaggressions are subtle, often unintentional comments or behaviors that convey negative or prejudiced sentiments. For example, a well-meaning friend might compliment an interracial couple by saying, "Your kids will be so exotic," which exoticizes and objectifies their future children. These microaggressions can accumulate and lead to emotional strain in the relationship. In therapy, it is essential to help couples recognize and address these small but impactful experiences, equipping them with tools to respond assertively while maintaining their emotional well-being. So in this area, opening these conversations with couples so that we can talk about what are our boundaries and how will we both respond, because often the white partner will leave it to the BIPOC partner to address microaggressions or implicit biases. I find that these conversations come in stages. So first is like educating and kind of buy-in, especially from white partners. And then advocating is a hard stage to get to, but definitely not impossible. So keeping that in mind, like when we open up these conversations about challenges, is first, let's get some buy-in, let's do some educating, and eventually let's get to advocating. I also want to note that these microaggressions, the discrimination often comes from the BIPOC partner's family as well. And that can look like, well, you're not Mexican enough, you don't speak Spanish. And I have also seen multiple partners kind of jump in on that and use that against them too, of like, well, you don't speak Vietnamese, so you're not even really Vietnamese. So also opening that up too in conversation or looking out for things like that. Family and societal acceptance or rejection. Family disapproval. Family members may have strong opinions about interracial relationships, often shaped by generational beliefs, cultural norms, or personal prejudices. Some family members might express disapproval or even refuse to accept the relationship. This can create tension and pressure on the couple, especially if one partner feels torn between their relationship and loyalty to their family. Navigating conversations with family therapy can help couples develop strategies to navigate difficult conversations with family members. This might include setting boundaries, assertive communication, and expressing mutual support. It's also important to explore how each partner feels about the rejection or disapproval from their family and to work through any feelings of guilt or betrayal. Societal judgments. Society at large may still hold biases against interracial couples, especially in more conservative or homogeneous communities. This societal judgment can be exhausting, leading to the couple feeling that they have to constantly prove their love or defend their relationship. Therapy can provide emotional validation and support while exploring ways for the couple to build resilience against these societal pressures. Something I want to note in BIPOC circles, there is a stigma of white partners choosing BIPOC partners, especially when it comes to, well, I guess it goes both ways, like a BIPOC woman choosing to be with a white man. The stigma is, well, you don't want to date within your race, or like the standard of beauty for men is being white, and that's why you choose that. And then vice versa, there are whisperings in these social circles or ethnic circles of white men choosing women of color as a way of fetishizing or having the exotic novelty of an ethnic of a BIPOC woman. So kind of opening up these conversations are important too. And I think for the partners who choose to have a white partner, what I find to be the majority response is like, well, I experience so much intergenerational trauma and racial trauma within my own race that I choose to date outside of my race. For example, I have a Mexican client woman who often tells me, well, within our Mexican community, they often dress the same and have the same interests and have X, Y, and Z. And what I'm looking for just tends to be in a white man, like we have that he has this like a different interest and doesn't fit these stereotypes. So all of these things is very nuanced, but exploring those narratives with our clients is really important so that they also feel confident and rooted in their own decisions too, because I find that BIPOC clients in the partnership feel guilt for dating outside of their race, or feel a sort of shame, like, okay, well, now I'm just being colonized. And there is a degree of that we can hold, and that's valid. But at the same time, well, you're dating outside of your race because your community here, like you've mentioned, is doesn't align with your interests or your values. Internal dynamics, managing differing expectations and assumptions. Cultural assumptions. Each partner may enter the relationship with assumptions about roles, expectations, and behaviors based on their cultural background. For example, one partner might expect the family decisions will be made collectively, while the other expects more autonomy in decision making. These cultural assumptions can lead to misunderstandings or frustration if they aren't openly discussed. This is where the intervention of reframing also comes in handy, where reframing the notion of, oh, you're so dependent on me to make these decisions, reframing that to like, well, this is just a collectivistic way of living life and making decisions, helps bridge the gap. Bridging expectations, therapy can help couples unpack these assumptions and identify where they might clash. By encouraging open communication about their expectations, therapists can help partners find ways to compromise and create new shared expectations for their relationship. Going back to creating a unique culture within this family. Cultural influence on gender roles. Gender roles can be heavily influenced by culture. One partner might come from a culture where traditional gender roles are emphasized, while the other values a more egalitarian approach. These differences can lead to conflict if not addressed early in the relationship. Therapy can explore each partner's view on gender roles and how they want to negotiate these roles within their relationship. This is where I often see partners who are BIPOC dating outside of their race or choosing white partners, is for that egalitarian approach. Not to, it's important because when these things happen, there is internal racism or colorism happening. And so making sure we don't feed into like the self-loathing or self-hate, like I date outside of my race because I don't want to be with a machismo man who's going to make me do X, Y, and Z. Although factors of that might be true, making sure we open up that gate and dealing with the shame around that is really important. And a lot of that is is self-acceptance, having pride in our heritage and culture, doing that personal work. Addressing power imbalances and privilege. Racial privilege within the relationship. In some interracial relationships, one partner may benefit from racial privilege while the other experiences racial discrimination. For example, a white partner may not fully understand or empathize with the racial struggles that their partner of color faces on a daily basis. This imbalance can create tension, particularly if the partner with privilege is unaware of how this affects the relationship dynamic. So here it's really important for us as therapists to recognize racial privilege and be educated or competent that these dynamics exist in all these relationships so that we can broach the topic. Therapy's role in acknowledging privilege. Helping the privileged partner recognize and understand their racial privilege is an essential part of therapy. This doesn't involve blame, but rather cultivating empathy and a deeper understanding of how societal structures affect both partners differently. Therapy can also facilitate discussions about how the couple can support each other when one partner experiences racial bias or marginalization. Socioeconomic or educational privilege. In some cases, power imbalances might stem from differences in socioeconomic status or educational background, which can intersect with race. One partner may come from a wealthier or more privileged background, creating feelings of inadequacy or resentment in the other. Therapy can help couples navigate these imbalances by promoting healthy communication and exploring how these differences affect their relationship. Identity and belonging, navigating dual or multiple cultural identities. Maintaining individual cultural identity. Both partners may struggle with balancing their individual cultural identities while building a shared identity as a couple. One couple might feel pressure to assimilate into the other's culture or abandon parts of their own identity to fit in. This can lead to internal conflict and resentment over time. In my experience with couples, I don't think this is like with malintent, but often the colored or, yeah, the BIPOC partner feeling afraid to embrace their culture, have a strong cultural identity, especially in Utah when everyone around you is white and these BIPOC grow up in white communities outside of those relationships anyways. So going back to broaching the subject is really important. Therapeutic support for cultural negotiation. In therapy, it's important to help each partner maintain pride in their cultural background while also supporting the couple's efforts to build a shared cultural identity. Encouraging mutual respect and curiosity about each other's culture can foster greater connection. Additionally, the therapist can help the couple navigate moments where one partner feels excluded or misunderstood due to cultural differences. Impact on children and extended family relationships. Biracial or bicultural children. Couples who plan to have children may face questions about how to raise them with a strong sense of identity. They may need to decide which cultural traditions to pass down and how to ensure their children feel connected to both sides of their heritage. Discussing these concerns in therapy can help couples prepare for future conversations and decisions. Another thing I want to note in working with BIPOC in general and interracial couples, I personally like to take a client-centered approach, and I think it would be worth other therapists exercising that too, in that all of our education as therapists is very Western Eurocentric, research made by white men, done for white men. And so I find especially in topics with my couples who are trying to have children, have biracial children, if I take a client-centered approach, I can ask them, how do you want to raise your children? What pieces of your culture do you want to pass down? And then we'll talk about holidays, traditions, we'll talk about discipline. Often, BIPOC partners will have had a more physical discipline. And so we talk about the nitty-gritty of like, how do we want to discipline our kids? What is that going to look like? What kind of pressure do we want to put on education? And how do we want to address teaching them about race and who they are? Identity development for children. Children of interracial couples may experience challenges in forming their own identity, especially if they don't feel fully accepted by either culture. These children may encounter questions like, what are you? Or feel pressure to choose one racial identity over the other. Therapists can help couples anticipate these issues and provide guidance on fostering a healthy, multifaceted identity for their children. I mean, in my own personal relationship, I have a daughter who is biracial, and her white family will always tell her that she looks Asian. And then my side of the family will always tell her she looks white. And so we often take her home and talk to her about why that might be. At times, if I have family members or my partner has family members who are open, we will ask them, like, why do you think that? What do you see? And then at home, we'll process, like, well, dad's side of the family doesn't have a lot of exposure to BIPOC, and even vice versa. Like, my grandfather doesn't have a lot of exposure to white people. So the fact that your skin is more fair and your eyes are not as small as mine, that's that's what he sees. And we try to process with her that none of these things are are bad, or that it doesn't mean anything about her. So having those conversations with your clients too, and how they want to parent or their children when they come in with those kinds of questions, kind of normalizing that this is new territory for everyone, and we're in this together and we're figuring it out, and we're going to have these conversations. Raising multiracial children. Multiracial children may face unique identity challenges and experience discrimination from both sides of their heritage. Interracial couples may worry about how their children will navigate these challenges, and therapy can help them strategize ways to provide emotional support, education, and a strong sense of cultural pride for their children. Um, I once had a family in here where the biracial child was expressing insecurity around being Asian enough, and the mom, I'm trying to remember, the mom who was white in this situation did make a comment, and it was a microaggression towards the dad of like, well, you don't need to speak Vietnamese because your dad doesn't speak Vietnamese. And she was she made comments essentially insinuating that neither of you are Vietnamese enough, and that's fine. And I had to stop her and and somewhat and educate her of kind of reframing the situation instead of shaming them for not knowing Vietnamese, recognizing that dad, who was a Vietnamese man, did not have the need for Vietnamese, being born in the US and going to school, speaking English, getting jobs speaking English. Like, there's often a negative connotation, and I think she grasped that because she was well integrated into his family. I think she takes those jokes that are microaggressions, and like I said, a lot of these end up coming from the BIPOC family themselves, and wasn't recognizing what that was doing emotionally to her family, her child, and her husband. So just opening these conversations, reframing, oftentimes just having these conversations guides them to a change in behavior and a change in perspective. We as therapists don't need to drag them to that change. We just have to point things out to them and those patterns and those dynamics that tend to happen. Extended family dynamics. Navigating relationships with extended family members, especially if there are differing levels of acceptance, can be stressful. Some family members may fully embrace the interracial couple, while others may hold biases or treat the couple's children differently based on race. Therapy can explore how to manage these dynamics and establish boundaries to protect the family unit from harmful behaviors or comments. So therapeutic approaches and interventions. First is building cultural competence as a therapist. Having cultural humility as a therapist, cultural competence begins with cultural humility, an ongoing process of self-reflection and lifelong learning. This involves acknowledging that you may not fully understand your client's experiences based on their cultural backgrounds, but being open and curious about learning from them rather than assuming expertise in their culture. Ask thoughtful questions and invite clients to share aspects of their cultural identity that impact their relationship. I think this is said across the board. Like, I've worked with many white people, and all of them come from different cultures just within their families. So that extends to BIPOC clients as well. Just like that couple I had earlier, both Mexicans, but had different Mexican culture and heritage. Understanding racial and cultural context. To be culturally sensitive, it's essential to familiarize yourself with the culture, historical, and societal contexts that impact interracial couples. This includes understanding the dynamics of privilege and oppression, as well as specific cultural norms, traditions, and values that each partner brings into the relationship. For example, a Black partner may carry generational trauma of racism, while an Asian partner may face stereotypes that undermine their experiences of discrimination. And what this refers to is like Asians being the model minority, and the Black partner may be undermining or discrediting the experiences of that Asian partner. Avoiding assumptions and stereotypes. Every interracial couple is unique, and it's critical to avoid making assumptions based on their racial identities. For instance, one might assume that a white partner is unaware of racial issues, or that a person of color automatically has a particular stance on race. Cultural competence requires addressing each couple's experience individually and exploring the nuances of their relationship without relying on generalizations. And then the therapist's self-awareness. It's important to be aware of your own biases and potential blind spots. Reflect on your own cultural background. Reflect on how your cultural background may influence your perceptions and interactions with clients. For example, consider how your own race, ethnicity, or experiences with interracial relationships may shape the therapeutic process. Being open to acknowledging and addressing these biases is crucial to providing effective therapy. Creating a safe and inclusive therapeutic environment. Establishing safety for discussions about race. Many interracial couples feel hesitant to discuss race, either with each other or in therapy, due to discomfort or fear of conflict. It's essential to create a safe environment where both partners feel comfortable discussing difficult issues like racial bias, discrimination, and cultural differences. Normalize conversations about race, emphasizing that these discussions are important for understanding each other's experiences. This makes me think of a Mexican woman and a white man I was seeing, and when I asked them to like give me a pie chart of how often they talk about the differences of like their colors, it was very slim. I don't remember exactly what it was. I want to say it was like 10% of the time that we are aware of this, or that we acknowledge this, and that we talk about this. And then after starting therapy, the 10% on their pie chart grew. And that's where we discovered so much disconnect from the Mexican woman, like disconnect from community. And it was really fun to have her white partner help her reconnect with her community as well. Like, can we start going to restaurants? Can we start going to like the Latino stores or the Latino mall? And can we reconnect with this heritage together, because she had just assimilated so much to him and his family. And then and in this work, there was a lot of contention for a while of recognizing how much of our heritage she lost. And so we also did work on how do we stay connected, and how do we redirect your anger of being oppressed away from your husband or your partner. They were just boyfriend, girlfriend at the time. And how do we even doing the individual work with her partner present, help them grow together. We talked about how his family had land and vacation homes in Mexico, and how she often stuffed down that cognitive dissonance, but therapy allowed us a space to talk about his oppressive parents, essentially, and how that impacted her relationship with them and with him. And so I'd also say broaching the subject is also to assess for what level of oppression does the BIPOC partner recognize? And oftentimes there's a lot of anger around there, and sometimes that anger is misdirected at their partners. So just opening up that conversation so that we can identify if that's there and if that needs to be worked on. Building trust and cultural safety. Developing trust is key, especially for clients who have experienced racial trauma. Be mindful of how societal power dynamics related to race might play out in the therapy room. For instance, a person of color might feel wary about opening up to a white therapist about their experiences with racism. Demonstrating empathy, active listening, and validating their experiences can help build trust and foster a therapeutic alliance. Culturally inclusive language and techniques. Use culturally inclusive language that respects each partner's racial identity and cultural background. Acknowledge differences rather than pretending that they don't exist, and avoid colorblind approaches that dismiss the significance of race in the relationship. Incorporating culturally relevant metaphors, examples, or practices that resonate with the couple's backgrounds can also enhance the therapeutic experience. We're running out of time, so I will speed through this. Encouraging open dialogue about race and culture, creating space for honest conversations. One of the most important therapeutic interventions for interracial couples is creating space for honest, respectful dialogue about race and culture. Partners may have different comfort levels in discussing race, so it's important to establish ground rules for compassionate, non-judgmental communication. Encourage each partner to share their personal experiences related to race without fear or invalidation or minimizing. Navigating difficult conversations. Conversations about race can sometimes be emotionally charged or lead to defensiveness, especially if one partner feels misunderstood or criticized. It's important to help couples navigate these conversations by teaching active listening and empathy building skills. For instance, asking one partner to reflect back on what they heard the other say before responding, which can reduce misunderstandings and foster deeper connection. Unpacking cultural misunderstandings. In therapy, interracial couples may reveal misunderstandings based on cultural differences. For example, one partner might feel frustrated because the other partner doesn't engage in certain traditions or family customs. Therapy can help couples unpack these cultural differences and explore the meaning behind them. Encourage curiosity rather than judgment, helping partners see these differences as opportunities for growth and learning. And real quick, I want to add, a lot of my work with the white partner is unpacking what messaging they learned from their parents or grandparents, especially their grandparents, and seeing how that has interacted with the relationship. And it's often, well, it's really never there's never ill intent. It's just the messaging and the culture that often the white partners come from. And so when we unpack that and we are made to be conscious of it, that's where change just naturally happens for the couple. Okay. Oh my gosh, I have so many slides still. Naya, do you want me to end and just do a Q&A for the last 7 minutes?
If anybody has any questions, I'll have you drop them down in the Q&A, and then if there is questions, we can answer those. If not, you can keep going, and then around like 6:58, we can wrap it up.
Okay. I actually cannot see the question box that you mentioned earlier.
No, you're good. If anybody has one, I will say it to you, okay?
Okay. Addressing communication breakdowns and misunderstandings, identifying communication styles. Interracial couples often come from different I feel like we kind of already went through this, so let me Actually, here, let me be a little bit more selective with the time we have. Okay. Empowering clients to advocate for themselves and their relationship, standing together against prejudice. Therapy can help couples find ways to stand together in the face of external prejudice. This might involve discussing how they want to present themselves to others, what kind of support they need from each other, and how to handle negative reactions from friends, family, or society. Reinforce the idea that they are a united front, which can strengthen their relationship and build resilience against external pressures. This can be as small as a conversation about both partners going to doctor's appointments, going to school conferences, because I have heard from colored partners in the past, or even white partners, showing up to school, showing up to doctors and getting looks or dubious looks of like, is this your kid? So sometimes standing together, or sometimes that conversation is, can we do this together? And is that how we want our family culture to be? That we are always doing these things together and facing these feelings and challenges together. Finding allies and support networks. Encourage interracial couples to seek out communities or groups where their relationship is embraced and supported. This could include other interracial couples, multiracial family groups, or activist communities that advocate for racial justice. Finding allies can reduce feelings of isolation and provide a supportive network for the couple as they navigate challenges. So involving extended family and community in the therapy process. Family dynamics in interracial relationships. Family support or lack thereof can play a significant role in interracial relationships. Some families may struggle to accept their relationship due to cultural or racial biases, while others may offer unconditional support. Therapy can involve exploring family dynamics and discussing how to navigate difficult conversations with family members who may not fully support the relationship. Building social support systems, helping couples identify and build strong support systems is crucial for their emotional well-being. This may involve connecting them with friends, mentors, or community groups that respect and support their interracial relationship. Strong social networks provide couples with emotional reinforcement and practical guidance when facing challenges. Incorporating family into therapy when appropriate. For example, like my example earlier of incorporating the white mother-in-law due to the Micronesian husband's cultural preference of like, well, this is how we handle conflict. We do it as a group and not just with the nuclear family. In some cases, involving extended family members in therapy sessions may be beneficial. This is especially helpful when couples are dealing with familial conflict related to their interracial relationship. Facilitating open conversations between the couple and their families can help resolve misunderstandings and encourage mutual respect. However, this should only be done when both partners feel safe and comfortable with the process. Encouraging community involvement. Encourage couples to engage with communities that promote inclusivity and racial justice. These communities can provide not only a sense of belonging, but also practical tools for navigating racism and discrimination. For example, couples might get involved in multicultural events, advocacy groups, or online forums that celebrate diversity and provide a safe space for dialogue. That can even be as simple as looking up multiracial couple TikTok. Like I've had so many couples come in to show me videos that they relate to, and like the bonding is laughing about it together and like, oh, this is so true. I find that even that sort of community engagement and like commenting on those posts is very validating for them. So conclusion, we talked about culturally sensitive therapy, ongoing learning, and self-reflection. So engaging in continuous professional development, reflect on your personal biases and assumptions. And then we talked about dialogue and engagement, opening these conversations with clients. I didn't mention with colleagues, but always important to open these conversations up with colleagues as well. Um, and then here are my references, and I have a PDF copy of this slideshow if anyone wants it. I'm sure Naya can help me get emails of anyone who wants a copy of my slideshow. And then here is just my info if anyone would like to contact me for consultation or just chatting about your work or even my work with interracial couples and families. Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for attending.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone that joined this webinar. We're so grateful for everybody that joined. Once again, if you attended this webinar for the CEU credit, make sure to stay on until the end to get that survey, and then you will get that certificate in your email. Um, Once you've completed, if you don't get it, you can email us at marriagecommission@usu.edu for the survey. And then just a reminder, when I end this webinar, it will end for everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining and have a great night.
Thanks, Naya.
Thank you.